For more on this, let's welcome in Max Kellerman, host of First Take, host of Max on Boxing. No one at this network knows more about the sport than he. Max, I have to ask you straight away, when you heard the news about Patrick Day, what was your reaction?
This has been happening a lot in boxing. I could say recently there have been a string of ring fatalities, but there have also been a string of ring fatalities, last year and the year before and the year before, and ever since I started watching boxing and ever since people put on gloves to box. It is a very dangerous sport. And as many precautions as we've taken in recent years, the fights were cut down from 15 rounds to 12 rounds years ago, and that was on best medical advice. The fact of the matter is it will always be a part of boxing. And boxing people go to great lengths to try to defend the sport. It teaches discipline. It takes kids off the street. And when something like this happens, there's really no defending the kind of exploitative nature of the sport and dangers in the sport inherent in boxing. But, and I'll mention this on Max on Boxing tomorrow, but rather than wax poetic about how beautiful it is and what we find compelling about it, we just have to acknowledge that it is, there's a lot to not like about it, and yet we love it anyway.
So in that acknowledgement, and you mention how it's difficult to sort of legislate what happens in the ring to make it safer, is there something you look at in this, in other situations, and say, yes, but there might be something we can do to maybe add an additional layer of safety?
Well, particularly because the fight did not, if you've watched boxing your whole life, as I have, you can usually tell, something's not so good is going to happen here. I've called fights. One on this network years ago, where from the 5th round on, I was saying Batavian Scotland died of injury sustained in the fight. This fight needs to be stopped. This is the kind of fight where something dangerous could happen. Usually, that's a guy with a big heart and a really good chin, takes a good punch, against another fighter who's just better than he is, but isn't a big puncher. So there's no obvious time for the referee to stop the fight, so the guy just takes sustained beating to the head over round after round. That's a ring tragedy type fight. That wasn't this. It was a good, tough fight, but Patrick Day had his moments, and it wasn't ever the kind of fight where I was like, uh-oh, and it happened, nevertheless. I would say if I had to make one change in boxing, I would change it from weighing in the day before the fight to weighing in day of. Originally, it was changed weighing in day of because fighters would lose too much weight day of the fight and then rehydrate. They'd lose all the weight to make the weight, then they rehydrate for the fight. And the feeling was that's too much in a 20, so close to the fight, and injuries are happening as a result. The body can't take punishment the same way when you dehydrate and rehydrate like that. So they pushed the weigh into the day before. But it had the unintended consequence of fighters now going, oh, wait, now I have more than 24 hours to put the weight back on? Great, I'll campaign in an even lighter division than I ought to campaign and take 20 pounds of water weight off and put that back. So I think it actually exacerbated it. I'd like to see weigh-ins go back to day of.
Couple seconds left here. I don't think people always realize some of these fights where people have died, they happen in America, but others happen in other jurisdictions, other countries. Is there anything that can be done to try to make everybody work on a uniform standard?
Very difficult in boxing to do that. And I hate to digress from the question, but I want to say something about Patrick Day. Mark Kriegel has a piece up on ESPN.com right now. Patrick Day's father is a doctor. His mother was so against the violence in boxing and the danger, she couldn't watch him fight. She didn't let him fight at first. I know what that's about. My own mother wouldn't let me go to the gym after Dooku Kim was killed in a fight against Ray Mancini, and all these op-eds came out how dangerous boxing is. And all their fears were realized here. A kid who had options, who could have done other things with his life. This kind of tragedy befalls him. And yet Patrick Day was a kid who loved boxing and pursued his passion. And it's a really tragic story without an easy answer. And, of course, the boxing world's thoughts are with Patrick Day's loved ones.
So many questions about this fight, the situation, what could have been done, but so few answers, as you mentioned. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family. And, Max, thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.